Today's video is a continuation of Bertrand Russell's paper on denoting. In our previous videos, we have elaborately discussed the three puzzles that Russell has posed in his paper, and also we already have made a video on the solution that Russell is proposing to the first puzzle. Now in today's video, I'm going to address the second puzzle, and the solution, Russellian solution to the second puzzle. The second puzzle is the law of excluded middle. Law of excluded middle is one of the laws of thought. We know the three laws of thought, and one of them is the law of excluded middle, and the remaining two are the law of identity and the law of non-contradiction. So the law of excluded middle refers to the idea that either a proposition or its negation must be true. Both cannot be either true or false together. In order to describe this puzzle, already we although described in detail what this puzzle is all about, since we are going to deliberate upon the solution, Russellian solution to the second puzzle, so let's introduce it in short. So the puzzle, in order to describe this, Russell is taking the help of an empty definite descriptive phrase. So he is explaining this with the help of a sentence containing empty definite descriptive phrase. Definite descriptive phrases are phrases that begins with article the, for example, the so and so, the present king of France, etc. An empty definite descriptive phrase refers to nothing. It is actually a null clause. So emptied, in the case of empty definite descriptive phrases, the subject, the sentence containing empty definite descriptive phrase, for example, the present king of France. Russell is particularly using this example to explain this puzzle. So here the subject, the present king of France, and the predicate is boldness. Boldness is being predicated to the subject, the present king of France. That is actually a definite descriptive phrase. Now since there is no present king in France, there is a reference failure. Still, this sentence becomes meaningful in spite of the subject term. The definite descriptive phrase fails to refer to anything. But as we know, the law of excluded middle claims that either the proposition or its negation must be true. So in the case of the particular proposition in discussion, the present king of France is bold. Either this one or its negation, the present king of France is not bold, must be true. Now Russell is proposing to make an exhaustive list of bold persons and non-bold persons, so as to find out the person referred to by the definite descriptive phrase, the present king of France. But unfortunately, we do not find out any person denoted by the term in either list. Thus, we encounter a violation of the law of thought, violation of the law of excluded middle, and that is where the problem is arising. And and Russell is locating that problem, and he calls it a puzzle, that how can the sentence containing definite descriptive phrases violates this law of thought. Now let's move on to the solution. This is the most important part of today's video, how Russell is proposing solution to the second puzzle. In order to solve the puzzle, Russell is proposing a distinction between primary occurrence and secondary occurrence. In other words, he is making a distinction between wider scope and narrow scope. These are the technical terms that Russell is using in his paper so as to solve the puzzle. these technical terms will be clarified as we proceed in the discussion of the solution. All right, so the so again the example, the present king of France is bald. If we symbolize it, if we excavate the logical form out of the grammatical form, we already have learned that beneath the apparent subject predicate form or the grammatical form there exists a logical form, and Russell is suggesting us to extract the logical form by analyzing the original statement, and on symbolizing we shall get the following statement: there is at least one person such that is a king of France. This is one, and nothing else is king of France, the second one, and is bald. So we get a compound of three conjuncts, a compound conjunctive proposition which consists of three conjuncts. As we know, there is currently no king in France. There is no monarchical system at present existing in France. That is why the first conjunct turns out to be false and makes the whole compound false. We know, as per the 19th rules, if any of the conjunct is false, the whole conjunctive proposition turns out to be false. So like this, following this rule, the entire compound proposition, the conjunctive proposition, becomes false. So this is the logical analysis of the affirmative proposition, the present king of France is bald. Now let's move on to the negation of the proposition. The negation of the proposition is the present king of France is not bald, and on analyzing it we shall get the following logical structure: there is at least one person such that is a king of France, and nothing else is king of France and is not bald. Okay, this also turns out to be false. Why? Because simply there is, for the same reason, there is no kingdom, there is no monarchical system, kingship in France. So the both negative, affirmative and the negative, the proposition and its negation, become false on logical analysis, and this violates the law of thought, particularly the law of excluded middle. And there is this is where the puzzle is arising. Since we have mentioned that he is making a distinction between primary occurrence and secondary occurrence, actually the negation, the negative proposition, the present king of France, carefully you follow, the present king of France does not exist, is very ambiguous sentence so far as Russell is considered. We can have two readings of the proposition that I have already mentioned. On one reading, we can have the primary occurrence. On another reading, we can have the secondary occurrence. So on one reading, the logical form will be: there is exactly one person, there is at least one person, and such that is a king of France, and nothing else is king of France and is not bald. You carefully observe that here the not bald, the negation is qualifying only baldness. The fragment of the proposition, entire proposition, the last conjunct, the not qualifies the last conjunct of the whole. Okay, that is why it is narrow scope. Narrow scope is equivalent to primary occurrence. So on primary occurrence, we can have this reading: there is exactly one person such that is king of France and nothing else is king of France, and is not bald. And as we already mentioned that this turns out to be false because the first conjunct is false. Now, and on another reading we can have another interpretation. It is and that interpretation will be like, it is not the case that there is at least one person such that is King of France and nothing else is King of France and is bald. If we minutely follow it, you will see that the not here comes forward. It comes forward to the proposition. Now the not, the negation, is qualifying the entire statement, entire compound proposition. It is not the case. So the scope is wider because here negation applies to all the three conjuncts. It is not the case. That means the negation. It is not the case. You will be using curl in symbolizing it. In curl, it is not the case. There is at least one person such that is a King of France. Curl ex, kx means King of France, and nothing else is King of France. For all y, ky, ky. Ky and ky implication x is equal to y and is bald, bx. If you write it down, the symbolization, this will become clarified. So now what thing you need to notice? Here you need to notice that the not has come to the fore of the logical analysis and it is qualifying the entire compound statement. Okay, so on this analysis, what is the difference? What difference is this making? On this interpretation, the first conjunct turns out to be true because the existential claim, in the earlier case, the existential claim, there is at least one person such that is a King of France, this is false. Now in that case, this becomes true because it is really, there is no King of France. It is not the case that there is at least one person such that is a King of France. This actually becomes true and the entire compound statement becomes true. Thus we can save the law of excluded middle. So the affirmative proposition, the present King of France is bald, this we have shown by logical analysis how it is becoming false because the first conjunct, there is at least one person such that is King of France is false and makes the whole conjunctive proposition false. So the affirmative is false, but its negation, the present King of France is not bald. On the secondary occurrence, it turns out to be true because the not comes to the fore of the logical structure. It is not the case that there is at least one person such that is King of France and nothing else is King of France and is bald. So on secondary reading, on secondary occurrence, this becomes true because it is not the case that there is at least one person such that is King of France. This is true. That is why the entire compound is true. All the component conjuncts becomes true and makes the whole conjunctive proposition true. So what was the problem actually? The problem lies in the ambiguity of the negation of the proposition. The present King of France is not bald. There were two interpretations, two readings of the same proposition. On one reading, this proposition becomes false on another reading. On one reading means the primary, when we are considering not in the primary occurrence, this turns out to be false and gives rise to the puzzle called law of excluded middle. And when we are understanding this, the same proposition through wider scope or through secondary occurrence, this same proposition becomes true. So the law of excluded middle is thus saved. The particular example, the present king of France is bald, and its negation, the present king of France is not bald. The first one is false and the second one turns out to be true. Through the second reading, like a secondary reading, secondary occurrence, thus the law is saved. And this is the solution that Russell has proposed as a solution to the second puzzle.